Okay, we are online. Hello, everyone in the FabLab network. Welcome back to another amazing recitation. This time, a very good friend and pioneer in the blockchain, the usage of the blockchain technology, Jessi Baker, will be with us sharing her thoughts on the blockchain, but more importantly, her experience on deploying it in the Provenance project. So, Jessi, you have the whole FabLab network for you and beyond. Thank you for joining us today.
No, thanks for having me. Great. Cool. So shall I share my screen and get going, I think? Let me just... I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to turn off Slack, first of all. Otherwise, the whole of the Provenance team will be like, hello. Right. Let's share my screen with you guys. Oh, it's not going to crash.
Hopefully not.
There we go. Doo-doo-doo. Right, here we go. Share.
Okay.
Okay, cool. Can you see slides?
Yes, perfect.
Great, perfect, cool. And everyone can hear okay, I hope? I feel like I'm talking to my laptop.
Can you, let's see again, because I couldn't see that.
Can you see, can see the slides okay?
No, I know what happens. The problem with Keynote, if you put it in full screen using Hangouts, for some reason, just show a black screen. So probably you can share it in, in view mode, or if you can export a PDF and do a PDF, as you prefer.
Oh, sorry about that, guys. Okay,
Yeah.
let me just quickly export a PDF, and then we can get going. Cool. So, I am going to be giving a general intro today to what we're doing at Provenance, just as a means to kick off while I'm creating this PDF file. So Provenance, I started the project in 2013 while I was doing a PhD in computer science here in London at UCL. Really, we started life as a project and very much came out of a social need, which was how can we help people find out more about their products and where they come from. So here we go. Let's kick off with this. Screen share. How about that? Better?
Yes.
Great. Here we go. Cool. Maybe I will even put it full screen and see if we can. Cool. Works? Great.
Yep.
So yeah, Provenance started in 2013. We were very much started with a social mission in hand, which was to help people find out more about where their products come from, to really bring a new dimension to our material world, to help people understand the history and the journey of the people, places, and raw materials that go into their products. So we're now a business, so we've transitioned from a project into a social enterprise, which means we are set up as a for-profit business, limited by shares, but we've very much got a social enterprise model. So we've got a social mission at our core, which means in our articles of association at Companies House, we have clearly laid out that we exist to power a more open, honest approach to commerce on the web and out in the world. And as a business, we exist to help build trust and loyalty in brands. Through allowing them to be more transparent. This is what Fast Company said about us, which I think is a nice sum up, which is Provenance is building software that help progressive companies gain a competitive edge by sharing the process and materials that go into their products. So why Provenance was started in the first place, and why focus on our material world and their supply chains? Well, as many of you know, the mass globalization of production has produced a huge asymmetry of knowledge. Today, we buy products and it's as simple as clicking the buy button online or strolling into your neighboring store to pick up really quite complicated material things. And how much do we know about the things we buy? Well, I hope we know the price. It's one aspect that we do know. Beyond price and functionality, we know very little. So our kind of comfort with branding and online advertising has made us very comfy to actually know relatively little about the creation of our products, and also to care very little about what happens to them after we've their useful life with us. There exists now a huge asymmetry of knowledge, a gulf between supply chains and marketing departments in companies. So really, when I started Provenance, I was kind of looking at some key issues, which was we saw sort of throughout the 1970s this explosion of a new kind of era for buying things, where there was a lot of focus on the words green, on the terms sustainable and ethical. How can we enable our products that we buy in order to have these attributes? And it really was a very pioneering era where we saw the rise of certifications such as fair trade, the whole concept of carbon emissions being associated with the things we consume. It's kind of really sprung out of that era. And so yeah, we saw that 1970s movement of green. But I'm here to suggest, and I believe I'm not the only person that thinks this, is that we're sort of going through a kind of new movement for the sustainability era as a whole, and that is kind of a little bit more about openness. I think the green movement taught us that yes, we do need to be very concerned with the environmental footprint of our products and the social impact behind them also. But in order to achieve that, it's going to be quite difficult to do it in a piecemeal way. And actually, we do live in an information age where we want to know more about where things have come from. But in order to really try to make a impactful dent into sustainability, we need to start thinking about sharing that data in order to inform better regulation, better voluntary standards, and better use of materials into the future. So we're actually seeing there's got an explosion of companies that are already embracing this kind of new version of green, as it were, but are looking to take openness and transparency into their core. These are all multi-million-pound companies that have sprung up over the past 5 years or so. They're actually all based in the States, and all of them have taken some kind of approach to transparency as a part of their kind of core central values. And I'm sure lots of them will be familiar to you, like Tom's Shoes, who has the 2-for-1 model. Sweet Green is a small salad chain that is only buying from local farmers. Things like Everlane have opened up the locations and imagery inside all of their factories. So we are starting to see an emergence of a kind of more transparent company arising and being profitable. We're also seeing a lot of data to back this up. So Provenance kind of turned from a project into really an operational business off the back of the demand that currently exists for more open and honest storytelling behind products, and for people to find out more information about where things come from. These are just a couple of the facts that have informed us as a business. Key things being more and more people are buying according to origin and where things are created, rather than just happily buying something that's come out of any old factory anywhere, and a lot more concern for local production and finding out about the social and environmental impacts of products, and that being a kind of seamless part of the shopping experience rather than just a nice to have. So big part of our remit at Provenance is not about kind of sort of superseding the 1970s green era, but it's about reinforcing it. So looking at looking at how we can make the marks and standards that were born in the 1970s useful and relevant to today's consumers in a more digital world. So a big question that's shrouded Provenance initially as it set out as a project was, sure, we want to set out and find a way to make products more transparent and open up their supply chains. But an important thing is who is going to be the broker of that data. Who should be the company that should be able to help businesses to create more openness in their supply chain? Who should be the company that gathers that data and makes it accessible to retailers and consumers? And really, this question is actually at the fundamental basis of why we exist. Because one thing we realized when founding Provenance is that nobody should do this. There is no one organization or entity that is powerful enough or should be given the power to make product supply chains open. Essentially, along supply chains, you have a huge amount of proprietary and sensitive data, which warrants it warrants it not possible to simply make the data open. So if that was the case, we would have much less of a problem on our hands, because if all of the world's supply chains could simply just be opened up into some kind of nice shareable data format, then we certainly wouldn't have much of a job to do. And part of provenance is helping that happen. However, yeah, supply chains are kind of closely guarded secrets by most of the world's globalized companies, and seen as an inherently key part to competitive advantage. So simply opening up the information wasn't quite good enough. But in order to facilitate transparency, we can't just take the word for it of the companies. And so hence the need for somebody to broker the trust between the person wanting to find out the information and the person transferring it. So this is where we came in, and we exist to enable transparency and trust by using a new, share, secure, auditable database, which was seemingly impossible before 2008, to help companies and individuals keep track of their material world. So really, at the heart of Provenance, we are a platform for voluntary transparency, and a key part of what we're doing is building the future of trust in brands. But also, a very important part is this kind of data system that is fully shared and not owned by anybody, which I'll tell you a bit more about in a second. So yeah, key layers to our platform is pulling in information, making sure it's an accessible format, and the verified by a trusted third party is incredibly important, bringing traceability to source. So yeah, so the heart of our tools, I'll just kind of walk you through what we've got as a platform, and then share with you a little bit more about how the data is held. So Provenance is sort of transparency as a service. So we provide the digital tools in order to help businesses to gather the data and open information in an accessible format, and also facilitate secure batch level traceability. But how we hold the data is quite different. So how the platform works is that you can join. So if you are a maker of some description, making anything physical in any fab lab anywhere in the world, you can join Provenance and you can create a profile. You can invite your team and people you work with, suppliers, partners, in order to collaborate with you. And together you can connect information behind the things you're building. So say you are building a machine made from wood that is FSC certified, you can share that information inside Provenance. You can also pull in Instagram photos or different things from social media, materials, processes, all kinds of stuff into one place in order to share it. You can then curate that information to stories, inviting people you work with to contribute. So if you want to tell the story of a project, so creating some new kind of piece of electronics or something, you can use Provenance with which to share that information behind your project, and even map the supply chain and show kind of where all the components that have gone into the thing you're building have come from. And that can be taken anywhere. So we have a plugin for e-commerce and a plugin for any kind of website where you can bring that information to wherever your products might be, which could be in a store, out in the web. So a big aspect of this is not just around sharing the data, which is important in a collaborative format, but it's also around trying to help create a traceability mechanism for the materials and different aspects of your projects. So big thing we're looking at is giving each material or product you make a unique ID, and having that guarded in an unbreakable database. So that means that products don't only just come with stories about the people that created and put them together, but they also come with a full chain of custody outlining different pieces of different materials and different aspects of the product that came together to form that item. And this can be anything from an Arduino board to a pair of trousers, to a lettuce, to any kind of temporary project that you're working on where even the thing might be disassembled and upcycled into something else. The idea is that it is really a kind of digital passport that comes with a project, comes with a product, so that you can find out more about how it was created and the people behind it, and also track where the materials that went into the product came from and key attributes about them, and also where they might go in the future. So I've kind of hinted a lot at a new method for holding data, and I think you've already had some presentations from some blockchain experts. I think Primavera and also Vinay. But I'll give you my little intro into blockchain technology and a bit more about how we're using it and why I think it's important for material things. So this diagram shows sort of today how data is stored and accessed. And on the right, we have the future, which could be a whole new method for how we store and access information. So today, as you all know, most web applications similar to Provenance, they store information on a server, probably an Amazon web server or something else as common. And that means it's stored in a closed network, and it means that there's a system administrator that could, in theory, go and change every single type of data set inside the server, which is pretty suboptimal if you are very concerned about the security of that data. And it's pretty suboptimal if there isn't one clear broker for the data. So if there's no government, or if you're trying to build a system that crosses multiple governments or that crosses between multiple companies. If there isn't one clear kind of broker of trust in the system, then at the moment, we usually employ some kind of trusted third party to broker data for us. Hence the rising of things like banks. Banks came because we needed a trusted third party to broker our financial transactions. Airbnb, we needed somebody to broker our transactions between people with spare rooms and people looking for a spare room. Uber, another example of a trusted third party that has been set up in order to broker taxis and people. So this kind of old as the dawn of time in terms of like ledgers and governments and banks, and also new, such as companies that have sprung out of the sharing economy. But we're very used to and comfortable with this idea of having trusted third parties that are separate entities that broker our data for us. And often we place an awful lot of trust in these people, giving them all of our data or access to huge chunks of information about ourselves. And yeah, that's exactly how the world operates today. And until about 2008, there wasn't really any smart ideas of how it might operate in another way. So then in 2008, Satoshi Nakamoto, still anonymous inventor of Bitcoin, suggested merging of two fields, the area of cryptocurrency and the area of peer-to-peer information sharing. And that brought together two fundamental areas in computer science and allowed us to create essentially a method for sharing data that didn't require a trusted third party in order for data to be transferred between two entities in a trusted manner. In fact, the technology, the protocol, could actually replace that trusted third party. So hence the rise of Bitcoin, which was the first example of a functioning cryptocurrency that allowed anyone to make financial transactions without requiring a bank to sit in between the two people looking to transfer money to each other. But instead, the ledger itself could provide that brokering of trust. And this is where this whole field of blockchains is come out of. But essentially, Bitcoin was just one application that ran on top of a blockchain. So what we're now seeing is lots of people suggesting using blockchains for lots of things, which could be a good thing. Occasionally, you really don't need them. They can just, if there is a clear person that could broker the data, so in like a government situation where clearly a government could be trusted to broker the data, although not all governments necessarily, then you might not necessarily need a blockchain. However, there are lots of situations, including the supply chains of our material world, where you do need a blockchain because there is no clear governing actor for governing all of the information about our material world. Certainly shouldn't be a small startup based in London, that's for sure. So hence the rise of a blockchain. So blockchains look a little bit different. They do still have some characteristics of our old server architecture with bits and bobs stored locally, but on the whole, essentially data sits in a big shared pool where most of the users of the data are stored pseudo-anonymously, so you can protect quite a lot of identity, but much of the data sits in an open format. I'm just talking about public blockchains. I'm sure people might have talked to you about permissioned and private blockchains. I am not talking about them at all at the moment. They are a whole different kettle of fish. Just talking about the kind of the public side, the shared data architectures. So at Provenance, we are using the concept of a blockchain in order to share information about material things, and in order to be able to create an open architecture for sharing key information about the history of materials and the future, and also key attributes, such as, is this organic? When was this created? Stuff like that. So yeah, so essentially using it as an architecture to store data from suppliers all the way to customers. So we started the project, this was a video which I could have showed you from my keynote, with a material wallet. So this was kind of at the very inception of Provenance. We allowed you to register and receive and transfer material things on the open ledger. And then we've been extending that to include other things, such as allowing it to join with your real-world identity and adding other forms of data into the mix, such as images and locations, and even certifications. So a big part of the work we're doing now is looking at how we can carry verified data along with material items. So rather than just carrying certain bits of certain attributes, which could be a certain thing to one person, but to another thing might be interpreted in a different way, such as, is this coffee fair for rainforests or not? So we're now working on looking at how we might be able to carry verified pieces of information along the chain of custody. So that could be a verification at any level. Our main concern is with sustainability, so we're looking at certifications and awarding sort of standard setters to confirm data, but it could also be a consensus mechanism about any kind of thing. So it could be this was created in this location and have someone confirm that to be true, or this was created with this certain type of material and that was invented by me, and have that confirmed as being true. And actually the actors that confirm data don't necessarily have to be sort of big fancy standards bodies like the Rainforest Alliance. They could actually be anybody. And I mean, that's a kind of another beauty of the blockchain, is that you can kind of store reputation information as well as just the identity of the person. So you might be able to gauge how reputable a different source was in determining if you believe what one item, with the kind of attributes of an item. So just to look at the certification example in a bit more detail and what it means to be on a blockchain. So let's take some kind of attribute, like, okay, so say you're using some sustainable wood that's been FSC accredited in order to build something in a makespace. At the moment, you have the situation that's on the left, which is that the certifier holds the data, so they can see all of the wood that has been certified FSC. The producer and manufacturer have to then look back at the certifier's database and trust that it's correct in order to be able to see whether it's true. And then as a customer, so if you are buying or selling the desk, you also have to point back through the producer to look at the certifier data system. So everyone is quite removed from the actual data that says this key component of information. With a blockchain, that information about the certifications and the ID of the item gets stored on an open register. So therefore, actually anybody can see at any time what item has what certification, because the data system is stored in a format where everybody has access to the data and can see who confirmed it to be true, rather than just the certifier. So yeah, we've been doing this with quite a few food-related products, and why I was quite excited to talk to you today is we're doing pretty well in the food domain, but I'm quite interested to discuss how this model can be brought to all kinds of local scale manufacturing, and in fact all kinds of materials, electronics, wood, kind of anything that's being used on a local level to produce things. This is a little bit of how it looks for a fish. Fish are reasonably simple. They don't do too much transformation, so it's quite a linear chain of custody. And we've been doing this exact chain of custody tracking of fish from Indonesia to the UK market. And you can also create kind of interesting experiences. So you can essentially you're giving everything a unique ID, which means you can access the unique journeys behind certain products direct from the thing. You can also like look at where all the products are on a map if you have the permission to do so. And we've been creating lots of other fun experiences like receipts. If you're checking out with a certain item, you could find out exactly where that thing was created down to the item level. Yeah, so I mean, I guess what I was really interested to present to you guys is, yeah, we've been getting quite far with this with the food and drink sector, but I think this is much bigger than just us, and the idea of material value being logged in a database that's owned by everybody or nobody, depending on how you see it, but giving the ability for people to be able to log material value inside a blockchain, which is essentially public ledger. You don't need provenance to do that. We're just facilitating to make that easier. I think there's a real opportunity to extend that and to be able to make this a method for anybody who wants to keep track of where their materials have come from, but also perhaps keep track of them into the future. So yeah, I guess a bit of what I wanted to talk to you guys is a bit about how we might extend what we're doing at Provenance and start to think about, in general, a new system for open accounting for materials and how this could power new types of economies, whether that be a sort of circular economy where perhaps material value is just logged and stored and at some point it gets released back to the creator or to the area. I think it could be really interesting to explore drastically reducing the waste of materials. So if items are tracked thoroughly through a chain of custody, at some points that information could become completely public, in which case people might be able to see essentially what happens to items at the end of their life, exactly where there are opportunities to gather materials into new products, and even just having a transparent record of how things are being used and what waste is coming out of certain production processes. I guess the idea with having this dimension that's to products, being able to see kind of their past and future, the idea is to try and create a system where we are more custodians of materials rather than just the users, because you can't exactly destroy an atom. And I think getting onto atom level tracking might be a little bit ahead of our time for this talk, but I guess that's where it's all going, is that we do live in a finite planet, and that the idea is that we need to start to think in that way and think in terms of circles and recycling rather than linearly. And I think keeping track of materials and their state and ownership and processes that they've been under is quite a critical part of trying to move towards a circular economy, of which we're just at the very beginning. I think blockchains are a really quite powerful, robust data system for doing such an open accounting of materials. That their very nature, the fact that they aren't owned by anybody and that anybody can participate in them, and yet they have a clear structure and set of rules which makes them their utility very high, I think is a very powerful idea, even though they're right at their infancy in terms of use. Yeah, I mean, so one thing we've been thinking about a lot is about tracking items in a circular economy and their attributes and ownership. And something I think we'd be really interested to experiment with on a local level at a Fab Lab would be looking at how we could, not only track the materials coming in to a project or to some kind of production, but then also looking at how we could keep an open record of those and start to create some interesting methods for deciding how we would then open that record up, or if it was being leased or rented on a new kind of model, how could we store that data in a method that would allow us to make it easy for others to be interoperable with it. So this is a big kind of next step for us, really. Yeah, so that's kind of an introduction to what we're doing. Yeah, call to action is to join us. So we are actually going to open the platform, which is why I was really excited to talk to you guys today. We're going to be opening it up to anybody to join, to create an account, to invite teammates, and to share information about the process and materials that are going into your projects, and to experiment with our tools. So helping make your items traceable. And yeah, we're really interested in people that have kind of pioneering ideas for how this could be extended, and also kind of interface with other open projects such as material libraries, or process databases, or maybe even, there's a whole bunch of open design resources that we're quite keen to see if we can join up all together. So yeah, that's it. That's a general intro. Yeah, if you want to get in touch with me beyond questions during this talk, drop us a line either on Twitter or on hello@provenance.org. We also have a white paper, which is at provenance.org/whitepaper, which gives you a bit more of context for the work we're doing on the blockchain, and can show some of the nuances that I haven't had quite enough time to go into in this presentation, such as how we can deal with items transforming, and some of the kind of notions around the consensus mechanisms we can make for verifying certain bits of information. But yeah, really welcome your questions.
Thank you very much, Jessi. Jessi.
I'll try and non-screen share. There we go. Hi. That was a bit bizarre. I think I was just speaking to my computer. I hope some of that made sense.
No, I mean, we're used to those. In the meantime, we're building around video conferencing system. We're using Google Hangouts, which makes it a little bit impersonal for the moment. Yeah. The next years are going to be more interactive. So I have many questions, and this one, and also the people that are posting questions. But I will try to put one. It's related with this last one of the last diagrams you show about the design, right? Yeah. And then thinking about the different processes in which a product is, conceived, produced, distributed, used. Yeah. Even going over regulations, there are different processes of design, right? So how do you think that blockchain is changing, the different process of designing a policy, or designing, a process, or designing even an idea, a deployment, an intervention? So how do you think the blockchain is really going to transform how we think about design? How design that was used to be part of a manufacturing ecosystem, highly protected with no transparency, is going to be transformed with a more transparent and open kind of manufacturing ecosystem?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's a really good question, because we are so used to producing products and designing and manufacturing inside a very closed ecosystem, which is basically just a company or a certain situation. And I think with kind of shared data infrastructures like blockchains, it becomes very real that we can start to make that a lot more open quite quickly. And I think that really could fundamentally shift design. I think it will depend a lot on the proxies for assessing these products. So a big one will be regulation, because I think if all of a sudden you've got a lot of data about how products are created and of what materials, then I think we're already seeing regulation like creeping up very quickly with the data economy, like ensuring that certain standards are being reached for producing certain things. I think that will only increase, and it's going to fuel this whole industry. I think a lot of it will also be about consumer awareness and people being far more into renting things or borrowing stuff, and trying to be more personally concerned about their own material footprint, because that will become a lot more obvious. I think we've seen the quantified self movement. I think the quantified stuff movement is not that far away. I think once it's much more tangible to people and it is a lot more measured and in people's kind of radar, I think that will happen. Don't know in what time frame. It's not going to happen tomorrow. I think we're just getting to grips with the kind of what this technology can really deliver. But for me, it's very exciting in terms of sort of sustainability impact, what it could do.
And I have another question which is related to something that you just said, and it's like these proxies, right? And in learning from previous talks about the blockchain and also from Bitcoin, we know that the Bitcoin blockchain is a very like a trustless blockchain.
Yeah.
Trust doesn't matter at all.
No.
But probably when we're talking about fish or the recent project that you had been doing in Bali with tuna.
Yeah.
You need some kind of an intermediate level of trust. Is that correct? It's kind of a smart contract that you kind of sign with the fisherman, right? With the industry.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
I mean, I think there's two things here. I think that it could work to create a full trustless network for material accounting. Like, I think that isn't totally crazy. I think what's difficult is to get consensus as to what the units are. Because with Bitcoin, it's easy. Everything just as a denomination of Bitcoin. Whereas if you're talking about a metallic car chassis and a lettuce, like what those things are is relative to where you are, to how people are accounting for things. So in sort of a perfect world, it's possible to create a fully trustless network, but you need to have very agreed upon sort of situation for accounting for materials so that everyone is using exactly the same scenario, which is sort of a pipe dream. Like, I think there's quite a few people trying to do that. And I was even in a conversation once where they were like, let's do it on an atomic level. And then of course we can do it because atoms, it's like, yeah, okay. Let's wait for singularity to have been achieved before that can happen. But I think in a more practical sense, there is some methods for doing that kind of thing, or if you look at particular items. So there's another startup, Everledger, that's looking at the blockchain to account for diamonds, and they've got a very kind of robust method for accounting for what a diamond is, and therefore they are kind of they could, in theory, create a full trustless open network for the exchange of diamonds because they've got such a rigid kind of outline for what they are. From Provenance's perspective, we have kind of we are interested in making it easy to account for things, and hence why reaching out to you guys, because I think the more we can join together existing efforts to document materials and process, the better. But yeah, a lot of the work we're doing is about creating smart contracts, so creating mechanisms which help people form consensus over something. So like, what is that thing? Has that thing met a standard? And that kind of echoes a little bit of what's going on at the moment in the real world. So how do you decide whether a farm is organic? You have a kind of third party who comes and inspects and then says, yes, this is the thing. What we're doing is we're creating that mechanism and we're turning it into a smart contract, which allows us to create consensus on certain things without needing to create a kind of universal law for every single material at this point. I think there will be a blend. I think you will always need smart contracts to do certain consensus mechanisms because you need to know what the standard is that the thing meets. But in terms of sort of material accountability in a trustless network for exchange of materials, I think there's potential for something like that to exist on its own.
Okay, I'm now gonna get a question from Francisco in Sitges, here in the south of Barcelona. He's asking if joining to Provenance requires to request an invite.
Yeah, it does at the moment. We are so close to opening the platform. We're just doing some beta testing. So yeah, it should be sometime this week. You should be able to go on and just click get started. If for now you request an invite, then yeah, we will just invite you all as soon as it's open. So yeah, it's a matter of days.
Fantastic. He also is asking about if this with cradle to cradle. I think you touched on that, the cradle concept, and like a cradle to cradle products. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Yeah. So very, very familiar and inspired by Cradle to Cradle and all of their thinking, for sure. As is, I feel like the whole circular economy movement came out of that thinking, or vice versa. Yes, very much. We are just trying to provide a method for trying to account for achieving that. So there is a really awesome, the Cradle Cradle book is fantastic. There's the Cradle Cradle Institute, and they are doing sort of awards for products that are kind of working towards cradle to cradle style behavior, which is very similar to some of the work being done by the Ellen MacArthur Foundation around circular economy behavior. We're definitely not trying to compete with either of those initiatives in any way, shape or form. All we're trying to do is to provide some ideas for a data infrastructure that could help perhaps power something like that, or help extend it to many different industries. And perhaps join, bring a lot of their efforts into more of a public domain, so that others can just start accounting for materials and accounting for lifespans of products in a more open format. I think provenance isn't just about the circular economy. It's really about transparency, and kind of we're hoping that will lead to more circular economy style design and behavior. But we see that a lot of the foundation we're laying in the blockchain space could really lead to setting a quite robust foundation for material recycling.
And I think you could add accessibility, to make this be transparent, be accountable, make it accessible for anyone. Not having to go and be certified by someone else, as you have been saying. I think accessibility.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, even beyond provenance. I mean, the idea is that provenance is an easy way to make yourself transparent and to use the blockchain to account for your materials and the history of your products. But the idea is we're building this on a public blockchain. Like we don't own that data. We certainly don't own the interface with it. So in theory, if other people could build ways to interface on the same blockchain and do almost exactly the same as us if they wanted to. But the idea is that we kind of come up with a common language, common protocols for accounting, and then it will be our job just to make sure we're the best user experience for interfacing with it. But we could die and it could persist.
Yeah, that's fantastic, because we had Bill McDonough talking in Fab 10 and in Barcelona.
Great. Yeah.
And also Ellen MacArthur as well. So
cool. Yeah, no, we are really just trying to help present ideas in the tech world that can help support those models for sure.
Awesome. So I have more questions. They're popping in. Remind you also, he's from Paris. Hi Jessi, most massively produced goods we are now using are highly standardized and have no identity at all. Is your project an attempt to use the blockchain to authenticate, obviously, the provenance of a good, the commercial exchange between peers, as well as to reveal the feeling that behind a product there is still someone? Do you think the benefit will be fair trade?
Yeah, no, I think that's really interesting. Yeah, I totally agree. We are just buying massively standardized things, but the reality is most of the stuff we are buying isn't standardized. Like certain products are made by certain people and they've arrived at a retailer at a certain time. It's not like every product is completely and utterly uniform. And I think, we are trying to bring that dimension into the purchasing arena. And get people to think about when has this product arrived in store and what factory did this product actually come from, rather than just everything's exactly the same. So yeah, that's one thing, and hence why we're working with companies that want to be voluntarily transparent. We're not a WikiLeaks for products. Like, we're not trying to kind of go out there and make people give that information. We're trying to help people to bring it and to bring a new dimension to a mass-produced thing for sure. So it's definitely a part of what we're doing. I think, so by giving these products their own ID or a kind of batch of them having a unique ID, that does mean that they could be used in a different way. By using the IDs that we're giving products, you could start a sharing economy program or something like that. So if it was a drill that was bought from B&Q, in theory, you could use provenance to register that drill, and then you could actually use our platform to lend out the drill to your friends and create an immutable record of it if you wanted to. We haven't had anyone do that, but you could do that. So that's why we're up for people to have a play and look at what we've built and repurpose it for things like that if you want. I think that it's very much designed to be played with like that. I think the ultimate goal for us is to really start to create this open infrastructure for kind of accounting for where things have come from and where things are going. And definitely something like fair trade is a very important part of that. So we've done a whole bunch of research recently on what people value about products, and certainly having a positive social impact is high. I think there's not many people that are keen to buy something where people have been paid like literally zero to create the thing. So yeah, we hope that eventually we could become a method for being able to prove that information. We're not interested to supersede fair trade, that's for sure. I think they've done a lot of work in creating the standards and helping to set the precedent. We're just looking to reinforce their work and hopefully make it more applicable and accessible to more products.
No, and I think that there is also a question like when you buy a cheap product, actually, you are not buying a cheap product. You are actually like a loan in the future.
Yeah,
somehow.
exactly. I know.
Loan in the cost.
Yeah. But that mentality is so new, right? I mean, you aren't, and just being in total denial about anything that happened to the product beforehand, I think it can't last long, that kind of behavior.
Exactly. So we have a question from Suveri Moore. Do you think that it's possible to create a consistent accounting system for globally traded commodities like aluminum, wheat, that will remain accurate across companies and countries? How do you ensure reliable information over time?
Yeah, and a great question. I've had quite a few debates about this recently. Yeah, because kind of as I mentioned before, it's very difficult to do because what one person says is a green coffee bean and what another person says is a green coffee bean it's not always exactly the same thing. There are different types of plants, there are different types of drying processes. There's so many nuances for accounting for materials. It's absolutely insane. And so to get something in to be such a kind of quantitative measure, knowing that you would have no doubt between the things, I think is difficult, which is why I've been involved in many far out debates about atomic kind of literally atomic level accounting for things, which is also ludicrous, but actually not so ludicrous because the cost of molecular scanning has gone down so drastically that lots of people are thinking, well, if we can molecular scan the coffee in both places, then perhaps you could actually say that they're equivalent and know what the differences between the two are. But that is really getting our geek on. I think we're quite a way away from that happening for all commodities, but in theory it could. I think for the time being, we're using similar levels of accounting that are existing in supply chains now, which is on weight and age and when it was picked and bits and bobs like that. A huge challenge we have and a huge challenge creating a proper transparency system for commodities is around getting standard protocols. So encouraging people to digitize how they account for, say, coffee or aluminium. It's difficult at the moment. It's completely closed. Like even barcodes, which are on so many products, the data behind barcodes is a closed data set that's owned by a private company called GS1. Like even that isn't open. So I think we've got a very long way to go before people are really sharing open information about how they're accounting for products. But if they did, there is such huge scope with a data system like a blockchain to create such a robust method for accounting for things, and being able to keep certain crucial data pseudo-anonymous, which is of course going to be attractive to traders and things like that. But yeah, I think it's possible.
So I would like to ask also, maybe some technicalities. How hardware sensitive is provenance? Meaning that which infrastructure you're relying with your blockchain? Is Ethereum blockchain? I understand.
Yeah.
And how hardware sensitive is that? Meaning that what's the danger of having something like the criticism on Bitcoin, like the Chinese miners trying to get the most of the the weight of the network and being able in some point probably to get consensus and control it. How how is which are the risks in something like provenance?
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, these are risks that any applications being built on blockchains at the moment, is that there's still a huge issue around scale, which is kind of like the elephant in the room when you're talking about any kind of application like this, because people are like, yeah, great idea, but like you could only commit like 7 transactions a minute or second or something now, so therefore like good luck with that. So yeah, I mean, scale is a huge issue and it's a challenge facing to anyone looking to use this as an infrastructure for data, and it's certainly not unique to provenance. I think there are also significant hardware capabilities needed to run blockchains currently, due to the sort of highly intense level of processing needed in order to validate transactions. It's not something we're dealing with as a company. Like, I don't think we're setting out to try and improve blockchain infrastructure by any means. We're just suggesting an application layer for it, and really riding the wave of the technological advancement that's happening actually very quickly. As kind of lots of you know, I'm sure there's still a lot of different solutions for building blockchain databases. I'm mainly just talking about public style. There's a whole bunch of private style stuff as well. There's also, a huge amount of debate around how to scale some of the more robust public chains like the Bitcoin blockchain in order to include lots of new applications that perhaps are non-financial or different financial denominations. This is very much far from solved, as anyone that's following the block size debate knows. And there's quite a few different schools of thought. One is Ethereum, which is a whole new method for creating applications and working on blockchains. Still going to face similar challenges, but has kind of a lot of unique parts about it which make it quite well suited for creating more complex applications. But also comes with a lot of weird stuff itself. Like, it's got its own programming language and all of that, which is great if you're an Uber nerd, but it's not great if you're trying to create an application that's got wide appeal. Bitcoin, there's a lot of work happening in something called side chains, where allowing people to use the Bitcoin blockchain as a kind of robust skeleton for blockchain infrastructure, but instead building off applications kind of hooked onto the chain. So Blockstream are easily my favorite blog and writers on the sort of sidechain stuff. Super interesting. I think, there's a huge amount of challenges, and like following the space is really fascinating. And I think I do feel optimistic that there is enough gravity around this technology now that solutions will be found. I think enough people are kind of invested in the idea and kind of what it can create that and there's enough bright people in the room that I'm not too concerned, let's put it that way. I think what's important though is that we start to create and show what applications could be made with blockchains. So at the moment, it's really looking like the front runners are mainly in finance, which I think is just like, oh, come on. I really think there's so many other uses for this, and so getting sort of tangible, exciting use cases out there will only attract more bright people to start to think about how this can scale. We have other hardware issues with provenance. So I mean, there's one hardware issue in terms of like holding the processing power for the network, which is common to all blockchain applications, and much going on in that debate. But we have other hardware issues, which is around linking physical and digital. So at the moment with provenance, we're very focused on the software side and accounting for things that are being accounted for currently with pen and paper, such as batches being transferred between nodes in supply chains, or consensus mechanisms like this is organic, and trying to digitize those and put them on blockchains. But there does come to the point of, particularly with very high value things, you might need to sort of connect the digital and the physical in a more robust way than just simply accounting for it. So we have a whole bunch of hardware in our world. We're sort of cracking one thing at a time, really. Sort of software is the first place to start, I think.
Yeah, so I think that has been answering a couple of the questions that people has been posting. I want to resume it in two things. One is how you input the human work. It means like not the task of adding something into the blockchain, but actually the human work behind the thing that you are adding into a blockchain. Mm-hmm. And also after that, how the certification and authenticity you keep track on that authentication and authenticity over time. I'm trying to resume a couple questions that people are posting together.
So I think the last one maybe is a bit about joining physical and digital, and kind of how do you know that this is exactly this car or whatever the thing is you're accounting for. And the one before, I guess, so that's a little bit more about how do we create common protocols for processes, not just materials, I guess. So the first one, sort of common processes, again, this is like huge open book that we can't just solve on our own, which is, it's one thing accounting for materials, like this is a bag of green coffee beans that are organic. It's another thing for accounting for all of the different attributes and affordances that have gone into that bag of green coffee beans. Of course, there's lots of existing standards, there's lots of existing methods for gathering that data, like their fair trade. So, that tells you a whole nother thing about them too. But again, we need to create open protocols for accounting for all the kind of attributes that go with a material thing. The blockchain gives us some, so it gives us like a timestamp and bits and can build a chain of custody, so you can see sort of the hands it's traveled through and things like that. But in terms of really setting out attributes and processes that have happened to things, that's all needs to happen. And then the last one about the authenticity piece, it's interesting. So I think we are often dealing with food and drinks related products where some of them, the value of them isn't so high. So it means we're actually accounting for the premium of the product. So for example, we've been out fishing in Indonesia, or we're catching yellowfin tuna fish, and we're looking at not just tracking the fish itself, we're tracking the kind of attributes of the fish. So such as who caught it, with what methods, do they have a certification, and actually accounting on an open ledger for those attributes, which can then be confirmed by auditors that go and check the supply chains. So someone swapping a fish for another fish doesn't make financial sense, because if you can only get the premium for the things that come with the digital certificates, it doesn't really make sense to swap one fish for another, because you're just going to get the same money. But if we were talking about accounting for artwork, say like a Mona Lisa, it does make sense to swap a fake Mona Lisa and keep the real Mona Lisa for yourself, because you want to keep it in your bedroom or whatever. So therefore you get a different thing, which is where you need a much more robust connection to the physical world, because the financial incentive is enough that you could get people to swap. So this is where we've looked a little bit at things like molecular scanning. There's also lots of work on kind of defining attributes of different types of objects, from artwork to jewelry to metals, and all kinds of different fields that have been used to analyze these things. Again, we're keen to bring these together and form open protocols about them. So helping people to account for things in a way that's recognized as an open standard. So it might be that we create one for artwork, which is, if you've got an artwork, you need to have a molecular scan of down the middle of the painting or something. If you don't have that, then it can't be real. But it's right at the beginning, and I think there's so many fields to tackle, and it's just important that and people start to realize that this can happen, this can be accounted for in an open way, robustly. So ideas are welcome.
Fantastic. I would like to finish with an easy one. So we have around 300 students in the FAB Academy, they're going to bring products to life in the next couple months. They're finishing at the mid-June. It would be, can we think about these products being tracked by a blockchain in the provenance? Do you see that feasible?
Definitely feasible. I think that would be really great. Yeah. So
Okay.
if everyone just requests an invite, and then when we're live later in the week, they can get started, create profiles for themselves. They can start sharing, making photos, and inviting teammates and stuff like that. And then the only catch thing with using the blockchain to track products is everyone needs to have a confirmed account, which is where we give them a key pair. But we'll be working through those as quickly as we can. At the moment, it's a bit of a queue to get a confirmed account, but I think by the time we've got you all set up and running with on our existing tools, I think it should be fairly easy to do. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. So the challenge is set for people to being able to make transparent products. Let's see how many of them come.
See what business models people can create by being able to track them on the blockchain. Yeah, sounds great.
Exactly.
We're up for that, definitely.
Awesome. So thank you very much, Jessi. It's been lovely to have you.
Yeah, and thanks so much. And really welcome questions on Twitter or over email. And it'd be really good to keep in touch with you guys through the projects as well.
Exactly. Okay.
Cheers. Thanks so much. Have a good afternoon. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye, everyone. We'll see you next week with Carl Batz, CEO of Autodesk. Ciao.